Greetings to everybody at Local Labs. I'm so inspired to know you're spending all this time on solving the big problems that face all of us, and especially to know that you're devoting your ingenuity and creativity to coming up with innovative solutions. I'm especially pleased to be able to have a few minutes with you today just to talk about some of that and perhaps to provide any additional motivation, although I suspect none is needed, as well as to provide perhaps a few just reminders along the way. I thought what I would do with our few minutes together is talk to you about a question that's been in my mind that emerged from a prior crisis, from this one, the one we're living through around COVID and all the ones that have joined up with it. A proposed answer to that question, which has been in my mind for so long, which is possibility government, a very brief discussion of what it is, what it would take, and ultimately a few tips about possibility government and prototyping. But the question that emerged in my mind emerged, as I said, in a prior crisis, this one in 2013, when I worked for the city of Boston, and two bombs were blown up at the finish line of the Boston Marathon on what was typically our best day of the year. Now, the one good thing to happen from that day was the sheer generosity of the human spirit, which included all the gifts that were started to flow in from around the world. People saying, how can we help? To where can we send money? Normally, in those situations in the United States, after a series of attacks like that, what happens is the big, long trusted local institution in town collects and distributes those funds. But we knew somehow on that April day that if that's the approach that we took, it would take too long to get the money to those to whom it was most needed, that it would be too diffuse and not help them in the ways they most needed. And so we decided that instead of doing this the same old way, we were going to start our own brand new fund. Now, the next day after the bombings, I'm waiting outside hospital rooms where the mayor of the city who I worked for was going to meet survivors of these attacks. And I'm on the phone with the head of our long established local institution, a very good person, by the way, but he's yelling at me over the phone about our new fund. You can't start something new. You can't start something new. You'll raise less money. Well, we did anyway. That night we were up and running with what became to be known as One Fund Boston. And ultimately, we collected and distributed $60 million in 75 days, all of it in and out the door, the largest, fastest relief effort of its type in the history of our country. A year after these bombings, two survivors of these attacks asked me to tell them the long version of the story I just told you. And then when I did, they told me I had to tell that story to others. And I said, I can't, it's not my story to tell. I didn't save anybody's life. I didn't get hurt. They said, you have to tell that story to other people. You have to show people government can do new things. Well, the question I then wrestle with over the last 8 years, vexes us perhaps still today, is which is it? Is it what the foundation head had said, and all of us have observed from time to time about government, which is you can't start something new? Or is it what the survivors have witnessed and experienced and benefited from? You have to show people that government can do new things. Well, I've had the occasion to travel around the world in those 8 years to study efforts at government innovation like the ones you're undertaking right now in partnership with the community around the world. And I have come around to the answer. And the answer to the question, can we solve public problems anymore? Can we do new things anymore? Is yes. Yes, if we move on from what I've come to describe as probability government, doing things that'll probably work, but lead to middling outcomes, if we're being really honest about it, if we're being clear-eyed. And towards, in more instances and more issues in all levels of government around the world, towards possibility government, where we do things that will only possibly work because they're new and novel, and new and novel things are most likely not going to work. But if we did these things that will only possibly work and probably wouldn't, a few of them would ultimately be transformative. If we're going to solve the problems that face us anymore, I think that we need to move in many instances on from probability and towards possibility. And I think we have some sense for what that would take. It would mean we'd have to have new ideas in government. We need a government that can imagine. We would need to be able to take those ideas and try them, sort the good ones from the bad ones. We would need government that can try. And then ultimately, if we had those ideas and we tried them, we need to be able to scale them so that they made a difference to everyone. And I know you're focused on much of this at local labs, especially these first two components, having new ideas and being able to try them. And I thought I'd just share quickly a few thoughts about government that can try, about actually experimenting in public. And they go back to that fund we started in the wake of the Boston Marathon bombing and the website we had up the night afterwards, which was one sentence in a PayPal account, one and just one only, but answered a key uncertainty. Will people give to a new fund? Will people give to a new fund? And even a website as bare bones as this begins to answer that question. Of course, we build it out over the subsequent days and weeks. It makes me think of Gabriela Gomez Montt in Mexico City, who ran Lab CDMX there, and eventually an effort called Mapaton to crowdsource a bus mapping system when she had said 1,000 things at its outset could go wrong. 30,000 buses, street buses, minivans, no comprehensive map, and a plan to crowdsource it. Of course, 1,000 things could potentially go wrong. What does she do? She and her team start with a series of prototypes. First, to try to answer questions like, can we collect information from formal stops? Can we figure out the right incentives? Cash, iPads, headsets to induce people to participate. If they participate, can we make the data useful? But all of this unfolding over a series of experiments, again, tied to answering specific uncertainties. Same as Jason Bay and his team at GovTech Singapore, as they begin and ended an 8-week race to build out the world's first Bluetooth-based contact tracing app during COVID. Did they start with the full and complete contact tracing product? No. They started by laying out a series of cell phones, a cell phone farm, if you will, to figure out the one question, which was, can we use Bluetooth signals to detect duration and proximity duration on our way to doing digital supported contact tracing? All of these, the One Fund, Mapaton in Mexico City, Trace Together in Singapore, prototypes honed to answer specific uncertainties in the minds of the great leaders trying to build them out. Other advice along the way here as you innovate and as you use your ingenuity and test and try it. Yes, identify those key uncertainties. Yes, ultimately try to build portfolios of experiments so that you can have some of the big winners compensate for those that aren't as successful. Yes, separate out people from projects so you can ultimately build objective reviews. But yes, and most especially yes, the leader's job in doing all this will be to communicate that the status quo is often the less safe choice. That will give you the permission that you need, you and your community, in order to chase possibility. And I hope that you will. I'm so glad you're doing so at local labs. After all, we do get the government we invent, but it is possible for us to do better. And I wish you the very, very best with it.